Munster also back, Alan Quinlan. Munster are back.
No, they're not.
They are, come on. This is the start of it.
The results have been pretty good in the last number of weeks, to be fair. And
but it's more than the results, right?
Yeah, Graham Rowntree, you think when they're struggling on Saturday and there's young players, new players coming onto the field, new brigade really, who can hopefully be part of Munster in the next number of years, and they will be coming off the bench and stuff like that. I think it was 24-0 at half time. You're thinking this is really, really good, and that they'll get a bonus point win and win comfortably. But they're still underpowered, Ger. They're lacking a little bit of game management, I think, and a lot of those players have played a lot in the last 6-7 weeks. So and there's always going to be a reaction if you go in at half time and you're Phil Dowson and Sam Vesti. What are you saying to the Northampton players? And there's a general natural reaction. And
you have the benefit of an extra man for the rest of the game.
Yeah, and I think it exposed them a little bit in the second half, and they made some mistakes and errors. But I think the way they dug in, and they've shown a lot of resilience in the last couple of weeks, which is encouraging. Like I said early on, no one expects Munster to win a trophy this year, but it's a lot more positive than it was at the start of the season, and there's some, they have to develop more and they have to bring in some strength and quality.
But they're developing the strength and quality as much as they possibly can by not just picking players who are their stalwarts. Like, I don't think there's any way on earth that Van Graan would have left Murray and Earls out of the matchday squad. It wasn't his style. He didn't pick the young players when he had the opportunity to. He didn't bring them through as a matter of course. But yesterday, big selection to be made at the weekend, and they made it. Yeah,
they did, and
now it could have backfired, right?
It could have backfired, yeah. But look, at some point, it's tough on Conor Murray and Keith Earls, given what they've done. I went through that myself. I got dropped for a game, I think it was 2010, away to London Irish in round 1, and sometimes you can have the right attitude and you can be back in there and get another run. So I believe Conor Murray and Keith Earls were very positive with the squad. There was no head down stuff, which I would expect from them. They're both really good professionals, always had good attitudes about them, and that's what you want. I had in 2010, as I said, I got dropped and had to dust myself down, and I got picked for Toulon the week after. Obviously Munster went to London Irish, that game lost. There was a couple of changes.
You were delighted, were you?
Well, no, I wasn't delighted, but I was delighted to be back in the group. But look, you kind of accept when you're in that bracket of you're kind of heading in, you're into your 30s. I was 34, 35 at the time, and you're thinking, you can't go in and beat the door down and say, why am I not starting? You can be upset and disappointed, and I'm sure Conor Murray and Keith Earls were. It's just tough. From the timing is tough, isn't it? But given the internationals, the Six Nations squad being brought up, and you would love both of them to have a kind of a surge like Johnny Sexton had. It was a couple of years ago people were saying Johnny Sexton was finished, and I
don't think it's beyond the bounds of possibility that they will, but the right thing for Munster to do was to get that depth.
It was a big call, and it was a brave call, and Patterson and Casey, obviously, the wings, Calvin Nash, Shane Daly, have been doing well. Again, they look like they're being coached now. Look at the form of Mike Haley. These guys were players last year that people were questioning, should they be playing at all, and are they good enough? Now they're showing the quality. They're not tearing the world apart here, but they're doing very, very well, and they're showing a lot of promise. So they were big calls, and I don't think you're right, those calls wouldn't have been made last year.
Though even those calls, Quinny, I'm just looking at this, reminding myself of the substitutions he made with a quarter left. Like, Carberry's off for Rory Scannell, and included there as well, Peter O'Mahony coming off. So like you've got lads coming on the pitch with an average age of 23, like less experience. So he clearly trusts these young players. If with a quarter left, with Northampton coming back into the game, he's bringing off experience and taking on youth. There's a level of trust there.
Yeah, and it's not always. Sometimes when you're watching the games, you're kind of going, "Oh God, is that the right call?" Or there's an inclination to think, close it out here, but they were brave in what they did, and the coaching team, and I think Graham Rowntree is trying to. All you want from any coach is they tell you the truth, and they say, we're going to give you a chance, and we trust you and believe you, and all that kind of stuff. Players will always say that, and if they believe the coach backs it up with actions, it makes a huge difference, and you create a really strong spirit and a strong bond. So yeah, he made those calls, and they're big calls. Sometimes you kind of go, is it damaging to the player coming off? I say when Joey Carberry's coming off, I'm saying, is that how's he feeling? What's he thinking here?
They're the type of calls that happen at Leinster all the time, but because the strength and depth is so intense, you just accept it. With Munster, it's been like, oh, they have to play these players every second. You can never take O'Mahony off because the players coming in aren't going to be anywhere close to him as good. But actually, in the long run, all that does is cement that you're stuck with that. You've got to, like Roundtree, it seems, is thinking both immediate short term but also long term here to build that level of competition for places. And you might go off with Ireland, fair enough, but when you come back, if the lad who was in your place is playing really well, you're going to have to fight to get back in. What you did with Ireland isn't the be all and end all the way it would have been previously, where everything seemed to be picked on reputation.
Yeah, and you want that. You want that for international squad members coming back to feel like they've got to really work their socks off to get back in again. We've seen that, and listen, they're very threadbare, aren't they? The second row, they have a number of second rows out, which counts against them a little bit in the power stakes, but. I think the fans like Graham Rowntree as well. I think he's been honest in his interviews. He hasn't shirked away from being critical of them and saying it's not good enough. But given the resources and what they have, and the change of a lot of young players coming through, someone like John Hodnett coming into the side and coming off the bench, bringing energy. Ken Dillon has done very well.
Coombs, talk about Coombs for a bit, because there was just a bit of, I don't know, as a second season syndrome or concern that he hadn't kicked on to the level that we thought his spectacular athleticism and rugby brain, it seemed, was going to allow him to. And there was a setback. But like, most young players have setbacks, right?
They do, yeah.
And what we're seeing hopefully now is a surge.
Yeah, and I think that there's still a lot more in Gavin Coombs, and he probably still needs to work on and be more consistent. I think having moments... consistent moments in the game, but his form of late has changed. You go back to what happened probably in November with that game against New Zealand. Disappointing for him. He was then on the bench in Cork. A little dip in form, and you know, players do have this, young players, and you just look at Caelan Doris, Jack Conan, these guys in the last number of years. The amount of involvements they have in the game and what's required as a number 8 now, getting your hands on the ball regularly, not just the pick and goes where he scored a lot of tries in the last couple of seasons. Gavin Coombs, he's now getting more involvements. He's incredibly athletic, powerful, and I've said this from the start, you know, he's the kind of guy that if I was tackling, so he's a lot of leg drive, but does he hurt the opposition enough for his physical size? And I think there can be a little bit more in that aggression and that kind of swatting players off, getting the ball in wider channels, because he's quite quick as well. But in recent weeks we've seen a real return to form of him, and I think he has ability to go higher, and he's got to do it consistently. And then if he does, he's going to be in the Irish mix and certainly in the mix for the World Cup selection if he delivers it regularly and has a real presence, not just when it comes to scoring tries close in.
Well, sometimes it's is the fact that he wasn't down for inclusion by Andy Farrell in November. You know, Rowntree kind of hinted at that after the game at the weekend, that, you know, maybe that was the kick up the ass that Gavin Coombs needed.
Sometimes players need that, Shane.
And it seems to have helped him.
It has, yeah. And I think he's still just, without putting too much pressure on him, I think he's doing really well. He looks like he's comfortable, he's happy, he's enjoying his rugby again, and he's a very, very good player who's a big physical specimen. I just think it's those multiple involvements that Paul O'Connell and Andy Farrell love from players and need, and that's what the international game requires. And I think he's getting there, and he just needs to keep building on his game. But it's very positive for him and for Munster, and he deserves massive credit because he's still a very young player.
Yeah.
And look at his strike rate even from tries. Like, what, Zebo's on 69, he's on 29 already at 25 years of age. I mean, he's hunting down that record.
Yeah, it's a real eye for that try line, even though a lot of them are close in. But he's just so hard to stop there.
We've given Ulster a lot of grief over the last 4 or 5 weeks, and they deserved it. But I hate the moral victory thing, but like that's definitely a moral victory when you go to the European champions and with 83 minutes on the clock, you're still winning.
Yeah, it's been a dreadful run for them, really, as regards results. 6 losses in the last 7. So a heartbreaking one for them, because I think they probably could have and should have won that game. The conditions were horrendous and it was so difficult to play. And at times I think they were nervy and trying to contain La Rochelle a little bit. It was very difficult to play any sort of rugby. But Dan McFarlane's argument that they should have probably should have got a penalty try before half time is very legitimate.
Right.
I think they were putting so much pressure. There was numerous penalties and a sin bin against La Rochelle, and I thought it could have been a penalty try, and it could have been really significant, because it was just one of those games that there was a score here or there was going to decide the game.
There was no messing around with the penalty tries in the Gloucester game. Straight in, that's a penalty try, you've collapsed them all, away we go. Why was there a difference? Is it inconsistency of refereeing?
Well, I think it's just their view as regards, is the try definitely going to be scored? Watching them back again, I think certainly one of them looked like Ulster were going towards that line. Nick Timoney drops one as well, which is just, it sums up that unfortunate kind of those little breaks that you need in a match.
Is this a turning point for them though, where they go to a match where we expect them to get hockeyed and it's going to be complete disaster, but actually they're coming away from it thinking...
I don't know, Ger, to be honest, because they're pretty brittle at the moment mentally, and that's understandable when a lot of stuff has gone against them in the last few weeks. I think it's what you believe in the dressing room. When you look around and you believe that you're stronger than this, you're better than this, if they believe that, yes, it can be a turning point. They've Sale at home. They're on 3 points. They've got to get a bonus point win, get to 8, and hope for other results to go their way if they were to sneak in. But it's highly unlikely that they'll get into the round 16. So ultimately, no matter what happens next Friday night, it could be real disappointment and more reflection on the European results. To lose 3 so far has been really, really disappointing for them. But it could be a turning point. I think they showed a lot of grit and determination, and they've probably been questioned a little bit on that in the last number of weeks. Fight, but just that little bit of nous to try and get over the line. And I think halfback has been a problem for him. That game management, and dare I say it, the man sitting in the stands who was on here Friday morning, the La Rochelle coach, those kind of conditions, he would have been, to have someone like that, as a number 10, putting the ball in the right areas. But they've had their issues, but I think they can take something out of it, and they need to try and find a bit of energy this week and get a bonus point win against Sale, who themselves are kind of clinging on.
Dan McFarlane was linked with the Leicester job. I hadn't seen that, and then he's asked about it in the aftermath, and he's like, yeah, I've seen those, I love my job here. So obviously the job that he's doing is being noticed, and he's not getting any... people aren't considering the last 5 or 6 weeks. They're looking at the body of work that he's put together at Ulster. It looks like Leicester probably will hire from within, but he's at least being linked with that job.
Yeah, and I think it's very difficult for him in the last couple of weeks. You were given out to me for making excuses for Ulster and their travel and 1 o'clock and having to fly out on Sunday morning for the Sale game. And I still go back to that and I say, for a player trying to get up and having pre-match meals and all that stuff, you still should be better than what they showed.
Well, if it was just that one match that was wrong.
Yeah, but then they had La Rochelle the week
and
after,
Leinster
which went against them coming down to the Aviva.
So
there's more to it than that. I think Dan McFarlane, by and large, has done a really good job. Small margins last year, they could have been winning the URC, but it's that consistency, isn't it, with Ulster, and finding faults and opportunities. Opposition seem to do that at crucial times.
We've got to ask you about the situation with Eddie Jones, where he gets sacked by England and Australia are like, yeah, come on down, buddy, 5-year contract.
It's incredible, isn't it? It's hard to believe that this guy's plotting World Cup success with England a couple of months ago, and he's talking about England still been on the right track and been ready and been real contenders for the World Cup, and now he'll be plotting against him. I'm not sure England themselves and the payout that he got, and I'm not sure they'll be entirely happy that they didn't put a clause in there that he can't work with another World Cup opponent in this year, which should have been put in, because essentially, you're possibly Australia and England could be clashing in the quarterfinals, and he knows their players inside out, tactically. The challenge for Steve Borthwick, if that happens, is to kind of rip up what has been done and certain calls and patterns and stuff like that, which there's an argument to say should be done anyway, because England were very bland to watch.
Yeah.
And but it's amazing how this has happened, and perfect scenario for Eddie Jones. He gets paid out, and now he's a new contract for next number of years.
Presumably there's some offset.
He's back on the beach in Australia.
There must be some offset language where if you get a new job, we don't have to pay you. There must be something. Like, if there isn't, the RFU
don't know.
need better
Maybe that
lawyers.
will come out, but for that to happen is a big. If there you'd imagine there should have been something put in, because if you go and work with one of the opponents like that so quickly, but it's Australia's results have been poor, and Dave Rennie's paid the price. They lost 9 matches last year, and
it's harsh though. It's very harsh on Rennie, isn't it?
A late 50.
The timing, especially.
Is it harsh on him? It's their worst run of results since 1958. So if you put it in context and say, well,
January for World Cup.
Is it harsh then? You're a bit more ruthless, Gerald.
Well,
is it harsh?
It's hard to argue with that. It's
since 1958, their worst run of results.
Good, right? The performance against France, I thought, was sensational.
Yeah.
They played such proper old school.
And
Australian
in fairness,
rugby.
he's had so many injuries this year. I think they could be a real danger at the
too,
World Cup. I really think they could be a real danger and a threat and a possibility at the World Cup.
Eddie Jones might kill all the good attacking.
It depends what way he approaches this now. If he goes in with the iron fist and trying to be absolutely ruthless with players, he could break them up very easily. But
can I just ask you about Jamie Osborne before we go? So he's not your stereotypical. He comes through as a fullback. That's his, like, when he's underage, but has got most of his rugby at Leinster at centre. He's a big lad.
He is, yeah. He's superb.
6'3", 6'4".
He's caught the eye this year big time, and it's not for the flamboyant stuff. It's been small things that I've seen him do, and obviously he's shown a flamboyance now and real confidence. And Saturday it was a outstanding performance for him, and I think there's a real opportunity, and essentially this guy could go on and play for Ireland. He could be in a Six Nations squad. Robbie Henshaw is still a doubt, but he's another wonderful find for Leinster, isn't he? Such a young player, so athletic. He's powerful, he's aggressive. You saw the offload down at Limerick for Luke McGrath when out of nothing, so he can do that as well. A very direct player, but a really, really good player, and it was brilliant on Saturday.
The post-match interview, I think, with Marcus was like, and there's a troop of brothers. I don't know how many brothers there are, but there are more to come. Another Kildare.
Breeding them down in Naas there, are they?
We can't stick him in the team yet, can we? Or can we?
And the Irish team,
would you want to have a look and say, like, every other rugby...
I'd have him in around there, and I'd be, I wouldn't rule it out.
Every other rugby country, 6 or 21-year-old in the team for a while to see how they get on. We're like, come back to me when you're 25.
Yeah, he's definitely physically. The one thing about young players, you think, when you put him international rugby, is you worry about the physical side of the game. He is physically well able for it. So why not? I think he could be a real contender for the Six Nations, and
there is a versatility there in terms of where his best position is still to be established.
Yeah, he could be. He looks like a centre to me now. We see a lot of young players playing wing, full back. He looks like a centre. He's that size, that physicality.
We still don't have a second choice 15, do we? Like, what if Hugo Keenan gets injured?
Yeah, I think Mac Hansen played at full back at the weekend and was really good. And I was listening to an interview with Andy Friend afterwards, talking about when he came over to Ireland first. He was informing Connacht that he prefers full back, and that's his preferred position. I think comfortably he could play at full back.
Okay.
I think Mike Haley has done well. I don't know if it's going to be enough to get him into a squad, but they'll definitely consider him. I think he's played really well in the last while. But Mac Hansen is probably your next option to go in there as a full back.
Okay. John O'Gibbs sacked as well in the last 24 hours.
Job available. Yeah, I think their results have been really poor. They've lost 8 games this year in the league, won 6. They're down in 10th in the top 14. So again, it's kind of like the Dave Rennie Australia scenario. Someone has kind of stood up on the board and said,
not good enough.
Enough is enough here. They go to the Stormers the weekend, and could find themselves out. They're sitting 8th in Pool B on 6 points. So
what do you think is most likely? Because I know you've been working on the permutations.
Yeah, I've been looking on this. For Munster, I think not getting the bonus point could be really significant. The Ospreys got beating Montpellier with a bonus point. They're up to 10 points. Munster is 6th at the moment. Montpellier is 7th on 7 points, and Clermont 8th on 6 points. So Sale are 9th, Ulster 10th. They both have a chance, depending if Sale get a bonus point and win, they go to 10 points and will probably make it.
Yeah.
Problem for Munster is they go to Toulouse, so maybe a losing bonus point there will guarantee them. They'll probably still make it, but could find themselves out of the reckoning.
Or could find themselves in Dublin against Leinster.
Yeah, if they finished 8th, they'll be in Dublin against Leinster, and it'll be another interesting game. Yeah. At least the fans won't have to, pay for flights and all that kind of stuff. But it depends. They can't focus about that. They've just got to make sure that they can see if they can get something in Toulouse. But it's going to be interesting. Because we saw last year 8 and 9 points got teams through.
Yeah. All right. Good stuff, Queenie. Talk to you again on Friday. Thanks a million.